Hey everybody, it's tequila time. Um, Something a little different, really a little different than what I normally do. Um, Been intrigued lately about how barrels influence tequila, how bourbon barrels influence tequila, and then how do used bourbon barrels that are used to age tequila affect bourbon. It's not about bourbon necessarily, but it's about the barrels. And I wanted to do. I was a little curious about how would something that aged bourbon, then became aged tequila, and then went back to Kentucky and finished a bourbon that was made using those barrels. So I got doing a little digging around, and there's a few that do. I mean, we know that almost every tequila company uses used bourbon barrels. That's just a given. They're, I won't say cheap, but they're easy to come by. There's large quantities of them. You know, Fortaleza uses them, G4 uses them, Ocho uses them. Everybody uses them unless they use brand new barrels, and those are few and far between. And then those that use French oak versus using American oak. So everybody uses them. Some of them stick specifically with certain brands. I believe it was Elveo uses Jack Daniels only. And then there's certain ones that use Sazerac or BTAC barrels exclusively. But, you know, and then some tequila companies have merged with larger spirits companies that gives them easier access to other barrels. So one of those examples would be Ocho, El Tesoro in particular. You know, Ocho used the old Fitz barrels to do an añejo. El Tesoro's used several different ones, Knob Creek, Basil Hayden, and one in particular that we're going to talk about this evening is Booker's. If you're into whiskey, Booker's is a higher proof, a little more crafty, but using the regular, Jim Beam mash bill. I have a bottle here that I have acquired, and so named after Booker. No, we got Booker's. This is a different bottle though. This isn't a traditional Booker's. It's not even a traditional Jim Beam mash bill. This one has more corn, less barley, I believe is what it is, in their mash bill. So it's not actually the Jim Beam mash bill. But they made it. They aged it for 8 years, 10 months. And then they finished it in a used tequila barrel. Which, it's funny how that used tequila barrel is actually a used Booker's bourbon barrel before it did tequila, and then it finished the Booker's bourbon. This is where the conundrum went on in my head. So, this one is the reserves. This is the first finished tequila for Jack Daniels, I believe. And they finished it in a tequila barrel for 12 weeks. My curiosity on this is twofold. One, of course, let me back up a little bit. So for my birthday, I was given a bottle of El Tesoro 85th anniversary, which was aged, guess what? Booker's barrels. Matter of fact, it has Fred No's signature on the label here. So I've tried Booker's before. High proof, lots of flavor, lots of alcohol because of the proof. One I had was 126. I think the other one was 128. That's not something I would normally drink neat. That's just that's a little more horsepower than I want. I think I would enjoy it better on the rocks or something else. But I feel I have to taste it in its most natural form before I ever adulterated, even with ice or water. So, in doing that and saying that, the Bookers that I had before, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, but the Bookers I had before, that they were very, very similar, and when I tasted this, I got notes from it. I've got some of that whiskey, some of that bourbon, mostly coming from the barrel, but I got some of those notes, like I say, back on the finish. Delicious, delicious tequila. I mean, it's so delicious, that's all that's left. And this is not a cheap bottle to find. Very limited edition. So I was very, very overjoyed, over pleased that I got this. But the barrels that they used, Bookers did their 30th anniversary, made a special batch, aged it for however long. When they dumped it and put it into the bottles, then they sent the barrels to El Tesoro for their 85th anniversary, and then they sent it back. So in sending it back, they filled it full of this off mash bill bourbon, called it Booker's, the 2025 Reserves. It has I'm going to get my face in front of it. So nice. We're going to pull it out of the box here. I tried this last night. I do have bourbons in my collection, not on this shelf. I drink it occasionally. I get, it's something that occasionally I want, and I have a few bottles, and I'm back to this. This is, if I'm, with one of my brother-in-laws, we'll sip a little bourbon, and then we'll sip a little tequila, and usually then I sip more tequila and no more bourbon. So, this was my problem. How did this influence this? Oops, this. Let me get this bottle turned. This. How did this influence this? And how much did it influence it? As much as that it influenced this when it was the regular bourbon mash bill. So we're going to pour a little bit of each. Push my microphone out of the way from me. So we get these glasses in here. I'm going to pour a little bit of each. We're going to taste each one. We will definitely start with the tequila first because got to get the mouth warmed up. So pour a little tequila. And then we poured a little bourbon. So this particular relationship, really fascinated me, and I was able to acquire this bottle through my buddy Harry at Liquor King in Harrisonville, Missouri. He said I was a very lucky person. There was only 2 bottles of this allocated to the Kansas City area, and I got one. Woo-hoo! So, hey, I feel special. All right. Lots of cooked agave. On that nose. I get some of the minerality. I get fruit notes out the wazoo on this. Can't pick them out. I mean, they're just fruity notes. Sometimes it reminds me of pear. See? Up front, good añejo tequila, extra añejo tequila. Well aged, fruit notes, cooked agave, a little minerality. Just nice. And proof point on that is, I forget. So it's only 42.5. So 95 proof, 85 proof. It's not way up there. So it's a nice sipping tequila. Really gives you enough. Now again, this is the first tequila of the night, so it's it's good. It's got some heat, but the back of the palate is where I get the barrel notes. To me, I mean, I know the barrel influences all the way through the tasting palate because if not for the barrel, we wouldn't have the extra fruit notes that you would get, and just the influence from the barrel, a little bit of the baking spices and things of that nature. So, in saying that, let's give this a nice little whiff, and I get brown sugar, just like baking spices. I'm trying not to let the alcohol influence the aromas. And I catch hints of cooked agave, just hints of it. We're going to go back to the tequila, and we're going to get it a little better. Yeah. Lots of cooked agave that really comes forward. You get that cooked agave sweetness up front, and then I get the char from the barrel, and I get those, if I want to call them bourbon notes, the caramel, the burnt sugars. That kind of note comes, but it's on the finish. This is a really, 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 really special tequila. It is extremely complex, and that. Hey, So, in saying that, how did that? So we know we have a good idea of how the bourbon barrel and the bourbon that was in the barrel influenced the tequila. But once they dumped the tequila out and they bottled it, they corked them back up and they sent them back to Kentucky to do something with bourbon. And what they did was this mash bill. I don't know if I might have it here on the card. Let's see if we can find the mash bill real quick. It's not giving me. But the tasting notes for the reserves are the color is a deep auburn, caramel, vanilla, touch of agave, which is what we got on the nose. Taste is rich caramel, charred oak with baking spice, complex notes of agave and black pepper. Okay, that's what they say. I just know that this is a higher percentage of corn than the regular Booker's. I wish it had the mash bill on it, but it does not. So, and I don't know. I watched the review of this on Watch How Proper. They said this was a good bourbon. They shouldn't have put the Booker's name on it because it didn't have the Booker's mash bill on it. I'm not into that. I don't care. But I know that Jim Beam did it, and Hal has to do with Booker No, and that's all I need to know. So, yeah, I'm getting that caramel and that hint of agave. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but let's give her a try. That's a 2. That's cooking at 123. But, yeah. Caramel. Like I said, I got that brown sugar, burnt sugar flavor. But, back in the finish. I get this agave. I get this cooked agave note that I get on this on the front palate. I get it on the back of the palate in here. So, some tequilas are very barrel forward. Other ones are not. El Tesoro, Ocho, G4, the Camarena family, and that Camarena family in general are usually very light with the barrel notes. They don't want the barrel to influence it much more than a little color and some extra added flavor. And in most cases, that's exactly true. But there's other ones that they age them longer. They may change barrels in the process of making añejos. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes on. Zumbador añejo is very barrel forward, but it is a little heavier barrel forward than some. Does it make it a bad tequila? No, it does not. Actually, if you compare it to the Reposado, it's that change. It's a little bit darker. It's a little more woody as far as barrel notes go. Still a very delicious tequila. Fortaleza. The difference between Repo and Añejo. The time, of course, is a large amount. But one of the major influences, because of the way Fortaleza is made, I think one of the major tasting notes, other than the cooked agave, is hazelnut. And that has to do with, I think, the processes at Fortaleza that bring that hazelnut forward versus cinnamon, baking spices, caramel. You're going to get a little bit of that, but mostly, to me, is hazelnut, and I love that stuff. Ocho, the añejos are very floral. They're fruit forward, light in color, but they're fruit forward. You go into the higher proofs, that just amplifies that even more. Cascaween. They use a mixture of barrels, and you can tell by color. Can you tell by color on some of the ones that they use? And aging it at a similar time, and you get two different colors, whether it's American oak or French oak. And then used French oak that was used to put something else totally throws things into a haywire. The single barrels from El Tequilino. Wow. Madeira cask, French oak. Those are crazy. Not even similar. They may be French oak, but one had wine in it, one didn't. One might have had cognac in it. So, it's all those different things that play into changing the flavor profile or adding to the flavor profile. I like adding better to the tequila as it ages. I have the 2 bottles of the Siete Leguas French oak añejos. One was a Benny's pick, and the other one was it was the stolen cask. Those are both French oak, aged the same time, same proof, everything, and each bottle is completely different than the other on the flavor profile. Color's about the same, but the flavor profile varies. Let me see, what else do I have up there? If we want to go on the extra añejo, you have the Tirsa Llorona. That's your French oak, ex-cognac casks. I know the barrels were changed like halfway through to keep the consistency of the flavor profile, and then blended to make it uniform with other barrels. Yeah, I could go on and on and on and on, and we're not. We're going to stop it here. But barrel influence on tequila was unintentional in the beginning, and now it's extremely intentional. whether you blend barrels together to just maintain a flavor profile, or you specifically pick certain barrels from certain distillers to maintain that flavor profile that you've chosen, really depends on a lot of things. So do not shy away from aged tequilas. I have every stage. I don't have the oldest I probably have in an aged tequila is probably the Tears. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. It's the Tears. Oddball would be the El Tequilino Reposado Rare. And that's 6 and some change, but it wasn't in a regular barrel. It was in a Popone, so that throws a whole nother thing into that. So aged tequilas, reposados, you get some wood notes, you get a little barrel notes, you might get a little, a little flavor should be added to it. Just changes the flavor profile from a Blanco. And Añejos are going to be more barrel influenced. They should be a little more floral, a little more fruity, not getting into the deep caramels and the brown sugars. But extra Añejo, those are going to come that way. And depending on how long they're aged will determine on how much influence it gives. So we're going to call this one a night, and thank you for joining in, and hope a little bit this was informative. If you have any ideas, leave me some comments down in the comment section. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We're getting close to 130 subscribers, and I'd like to really take that up there. If the channel starts to make money, we get to do more fun things. We get to try more tequilas. We get to go places and maybe go a little farther out to go hunt. Go tequila hunting. So, hey, it doesn't hurt, and just have a good time in drinking tequila. Tequila should make you happy, not make you sad, not make you mad, and mine usually makes me happy. So, till we meet again, salud. See you soon. Bye.